Fox News alert now. President Trump left the White House, or stepped out of the White House just a few moments ago, stopped to talk to reporters. He's on his way to a Wounded Warriors event, and he is still talking to reporters, as we last understand a couple minutes ago. He's been talking for about 10 minutes, and he has addressed a range of issues, including something we were told he just said about investigating the Bidens and his suggestion to possibly have China involved. Yesterday, he said investigating Biden would not be tied to the China trade deal. So that was said by the president just a few moments ago. He talked about the letter to Pelosi. We will be issuing a letter, he said. We've been treated unfairly. Go over history to see how we have been treated. He also talks about China and Biden and the unemployment numbers this morning. Wages are up. We are happy. Takes a victory lap on that government jobs report from this morning. So we will have the president on video, and we'll play that back for you when he concludes. Another Fox News alert this morning in a big hearing on Capitol Hill at this hour. Lawmakers hearing from the Intel community's Inspector General. That is happening, Bill, behind closed doors, as the White House prepares to challenge the impeachment inquiry. We are trying to keep track of all of it for you on this Friday morning. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Sandra Smith.
I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning. President still talking. You'll see in a moment. Hear it as well. IG Michael Atkinson right now is behind closed doors. Now, he is handling the Ukraine whistleblower complaint. He has oversight over all the intelligence community. He's the IG for that unit. As we learned, the president could send a letter to Speaker Pelosi, maybe today, demanding she hold that vote on the impeachment inquiry. Now, many people say that Democrats already have the votes. Word of caution in Washington: you never have the votes until you actually take the vote. Here's Republican Lee Zeldin a bit earlier in our program here.
We should have an impeachment inquiry, but if they want to have one, there should be a vote. There should be minority rights. There should be subpoenas from both sides. The president should be represented by counsel. He should be able to present evidence. If they choose to comply, today, that's fine. But really forcing the hand of the House, I think, is the right move here.
Team Fox coverage for you. John Roberts is at the White House, but we begin with Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge on Capitol Hill. Hey, Catherine.
Well, thank you, Sandra, and good morning. The internal watchdog for the intelligence community, Michael Atkinson, arrived here on Capitol Hill about an hour ago. Since he's been in the secure facility behind me, what's known as a SCIF, for a classified briefing. He was last here 2 weeks ago, and so much has changed in the last 2 weeks. For one, the whistleblower complaint has been declassified. The White House has released the July 25th transcript of the phone call between the president and the Ukrainian leader. And we now have confirmation that the whistleblower reached out to the Democrat-controlled House Intelligence Committee before they officially filed the complaint on August 12th. We've also had the release of text messages, and just bear with me as I walk you through them. The first set we're going to look at is from July. This is an exchange between Kurt Volker, he is the former special envoy to Ukraine, and someone called Gordon Sondland. He's an ambassador to the EU, and he's also a contributor to the president's inaugural committee. That text reads, "Good, had breakfast with Rudy." That's Rudy Giuliani this morning. Teeing up call with Yermak. Yermak is an advisor to the Ukrainian leader Monday. Must have helped. Most important is for Zelensky, that's the Ukrainian leader, to say that he will help investigation and address any specific personnel issues if there are any. The next text I want to draw your attention to is from September. These were encrypted texts between a top diplomat in Ukraine, Bill Taylor, and Gordon Sondland. Bill Taylor says, quote, "As I said on the phone, I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign." Sondland responds, "Bill, I believe you are incorrect about President Trump's intentions. The president has been crystal clear, no quid pro quos of any kind. The president is trying to evaluate whether Ukraine is truly going to adopt the transparency and reforms that President Zelensky promised during the campaign. I suggest we stop the back and forth by text." Meantime, this morning, Democrats and Republicans have entirely different sets of questions for the intelligence community watchdog Atkinson. Republicans want to know a lot more about the timeline, the outreach to the Democrat-controlled committee, and they're also drawing attention to the chairman's statements to the media about when he first knew about the allegations. Listen.
We have not spoken directly with the whistleblower. We would like to, but I'm sure the whistleblower has concerns that he has not been advised, as the law requires, by the Inspector General or the Director of National Intelligence, just as to how he is to communicate with Congress. And so the risk for the whistleblower is retaliation.
And the State Department is facing, a very tight deadline, just about an hour from now, to provide Ukraine records, to the three House committees, Oversight, Intelligence, and Foreign Affairs. If they fail to, I'm going to wrap it and send it back to you because there's just too much more to continue with here.
Yeah. It is a lot. And your reporting is excellent, as always. Catherine Herridge, we'll see you again.
No problem.
Catherine, don't drown down there, okay? We'll throw you a lifeline. President Trump says he will challenge House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, sending a letter possibly today demanding that she hold a formal impeachment inquiry vote. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts has that aspect of the story. Now, North Lawn. Hey, John, good morning.
Bill, good morning to you. That letter may or may not go up to Nancy Pelosi today. There's still a chance that it could, but it's beginning to look like it may not go up until Monday. The president of the South Lawn, and you'll hear him in just a few minutes, confirming that there will be a letter complaining that he's been treated unfairly and that this is all about corruption. This is not about investigating a political rival of his, and certainly not for any quid pro quo. The president will basically dare the House Speaker to hold an impeachment vote. The White House is considering an ultimatum that it will not comply with any subpoena for documents or other information about Ukraine unless and until Pelosi calls for a vote on impeachment in the full House. The political strategy is to put moderate Democrats in red states on the spot and get a roll call of who is in favor of impeachment. Fox News is told that the letter is going to draw on many of the same themes as a letter that House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy sent to Pelosi yesterday. In that letter, McCarthy writes, "You have given no clear indication as to how your impeachment inquiry will proceed, including whether key historical precedents or basic standards of due process will be observed, including, do you intend to hold a vote of the full House authorizing your impeachment inquiry?" Pelosi wrote back to that, "There is no requirement under the Constitution, under House rules or House precedent that the whole House vote before proceeding with an impeachment inquiry." The White House letter, and again, here's the McCarthy letter that I've got with me here. The White House letter, which will be along the same lines of this, will really put that statement from Pelosi to the test. Republicans are making the case that until there is a vote in the full House authorizing an impeachment inquiry, everything that the Democrats are engaged in right now is nothing more than political theater. We also mentioned China there, Bill, at the top. The president saying that his call with President Xi, all of his conversations with Xi, had nothing to do with an investigation of Joe Biden. And here's one thing that people need to consider. President Trump has said a number of times that President Xi is hoping that President Trump gets defeated next November so that he can cut a trade deal or go back to the trade status quo with whatever Democrat might occupy the White House after that. So why would Xi want to undertake an investigation of Joe Biden? It kind of doesn't make sense. Bill?
John, thank you. Sort through it. John Roberts, North Milan. We'll play the president's remarks in a matter of moments here. Thank you, John. Here's Sandal.
All right, for more on all this, let's bring in Fox News Sunday anchor Chris Wallace. So, Chris, we await the president because he apparently is still talking to reporters. So we'll have a lot for everybody once we do. Chris, good morning to you. Your thoughts on the situation as we look to wrap another week?
Well, I think it's pretty clear why the president is going to send this letter to Nancy Pelosi demanding a full vote by the House. First of all, as has been suggested, it's a way to put House moderates. There are, I think, 31 House Democrats who won in districts that Trump won in 2016, put them on the record as to whether they're not for impeachment, but for an impeachment inquiry. So that's one. Two, it gives a pretty good excuse to the president, a procedural excuse as to why he's not going to comply with the subpoenas that the House is going to issue for White House records. And he can say, look, you've got this illegitimate process. There's also a third thing. If there's a formal inquiry that's voted by the House, it would give Republicans in the House more power. They would have subpoena power, which they do not now have. Now, having said that, on the merits, and you can argue, yes, in the previous cases of impeaching presidents, there have been a full vote by the House, but there's nothing in the Constitution that says Nancy Pelosi has to do it. She's the Speaker. She's got the majority. This is a simple case of power politics.
And she made that point very clear in that letter that she wrote to Leader McCarthy yesterday. Chris, Peggy Noonan, Wall Street Journal this morning, an op-ed, it is assumed the House will impeach the president. If that is so, how is the great question. If it is a straight party line vote, if it's shirts versus skins, then the Democrats will have their victory in the House, quickly fail in the Senate, and not win in America. This cannot be one party doing its one party thing. I think Nancy Pelosi knows that. We're left wondering what exactly happens next with all of this. We're going to hear more from the president in just a second. But to your point on that letter to Pelosi, the president just said moments ago, we will be issuing a letter. He says we've been treated unfairly. Go over history, see how we have been treated. This is a rough translate of what he just said. So we'll hear more from the president in a second. But how do they proceed?
Well, I think that Nancy Pelosi, or at least prior to last week, would have agreed with Peggy Noonan that this can't be a simple party line vote. One of the reasons that she resisted efforts for, 2 years to try to impeach the president and move against it, she said it can't be a purely partisan effort. There's got to be some Republican buy-in. At this point, I think there's 1.5 Republicans who have supported the idea of an inquiry. Justin Amash of Michigan completely in favor of it, an inquiry, not impeachment necessarily, and another Republican who's sort of supported the idea. But at this point, the Republican Party is held, but they're not holding the vote at this point. And the key, obviously, is what Democrats in this investigation are going to be able to find. There was some damaging information from former envoy to Ukraine, Kurt Volker, yesterday in that closed-door hearing deposition. But unless it gets stronger, this is going to remain a party line vote. Democrats can force impeachment of the president, which is basically an indictment, an allegation, on a strict party line vote, a simple majority, but it'll go nowhere in the Senate. So they obviously have to build up more information, more evidence. If this is going to get any kind of bipartisan buy-in. So far, it hasn't.
Some more words from the president that we're about to hear. After talking about that letter to Pelosi, Chris, he says, what I want to do, we have an obligation to look into corruption, what Biden and his son did beyond corruption. They hurt so many people in the Trump campaign, despite all unfairness, looking at corruption. One other big headline coming from what he just said after his suggestion China get involved yesterday. Chris, he said investigating Biden would not be tied to a China trade deal. Wanted to get your reaction to that before we let you go.
Well, he says that, and of course he says that there was no tie to in Ukraine to the withholding of $400 million of aid and the withholding of a presidential visit. But, you know, the two things don't exist in complete isolation, and particularly in the case of Ukraine, the link between withholding the aid, the fact that we now have found out from this top envoy, Kurt Volker, yesterday that, in fact, the U.S. was working to try to get the man there on the left, Ukrainian President Zelensky, to sign a formal pledge that he was going to specifically investigate Biden. Sure, create some linkage, but, the president is going to say that there's no linkage there. I'm just asking for corruption. I just will make one last point in that regard. Generally speaking, if there was going to be an investigation, it wouldn't be the president demanding another president do it and also talking about investigating his prime rival. It would be the FBI or the Justice Department going to law enforcement officials inside Ukraine and asking them. And that didn't happen. It was the president to the president, which raises all kinds of questions.
All right. And I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions this weekend.
Yeah, I think a few.
Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace, his interview. Who do you have coming up, by the way?
Well, we do have Val Demings, who is on the Intelligence Committee, and we're also going to have a Republican, Brad Wenstrup. And the key is because they're hearing from the Inspector General right now, so we'll have the very latest on what they have found so far.
I'm told I have to go. We're up against a hard break. Chris Wallace, thank you very much. We'll see you this weekend.
See you, Chris. See you Sunday. The president's removed. We're told he talked about Joe Biden the following way. Haven't seen his poll numbers. Said that Biden was taken off the garbage heap by Obama. I don't think he will win. Runs about 23 minutes in length. We should have it after this commercial break. Come on back.
News alert, you are looking live at the White House right now where the president just departed a short time ago, a little more than 20 minutes ago, and on his way out, he spoke to reporters and he went on, like I said, for about 20 minutes. A wide-ranging discussion with reporters on the ground there, everything ranging from China, the investigation, the letter to Nancy Pelosi. Here is the President of the United States.
So the unemployment numbers just came out, and they're the best numbers we've had in over 50 years. The unemployment number is down to 3.5%, so that goes way, way back. We haven't had numbers like this in a long time. Wages are up by almost 3%. That's a fantastic increase for everybody out there working. We're very happy about those numbers. The stock market is substantially up as it was yesterday. And our country does well. Europe is not doing well. Asia is doing poorly, to put it mildly. And we continue to do very well with a miracle. But the unemployment numbers just came out, 3.5% unemployment. And that is a tremendous number, the lowest in over 50 years. So very happy. And I think really very important, again, I'll say, wages are up. When I was running, wages were nowhere. They were going down. And people were having 2 and 3 jobs, and they were making less money than they made 20 years before. Now wages are up, so we're very happy about that. One other thing having to do with Poland. So Poland is a country, great people. We have a lot of Polish Americans living in the United States. I've just signed, I will soon be signing, and signed certain preliminary applications. We will be giving a full visa waiver to Poland. That means that people from Poland can easily travel there, and people from here can easily go back and forth. They can each. People from the U.S., people from Poland can very easily go back and forth between the United States and Poland. So they've been trying to get this for many, many decades. And I got it for the Polish people, in honor of the Polish people in the United States and in Poland. So we're very happy with that, yeah.
Adam Schiff got 4 Pinocchios by the Post this morning for lying.
Well, I heard Adam Schiff got 4 Pinocchios. That's good. He should have gotten them 2.5 years ago. That's a very nice question. Let me shake your hand. Come here. That's a very nice question.
What did you think?
That's almost a surprise. I figured that was a trick question, right?
Also, what's your letter to Pelosi say? When will you
Well, we'll be issuing a letter. As everybody knows, we've been treated very unfairly, very different from anybody else. If you go over not only history, I mean, you go over any aspect of life, you'll see how unfairly we've been treated. We've done a fantastic job. Everything to me is about corruption. We want to find out what happened with 2016, and as you know, there's a lot of work going on in that. I don't care about Biden's campaign, but I do care about corruption. His campaign, that's up to him. Politics, that's up to them. I don't care about politics. Politics, as I think I made clear, and yesterday somebody asked me a question, and I gave an answer, but always in the form of corruption. What I want to do, and I think I have an obligation to do it, probably a duty to do it, corruption. We are looking for corruption. When you look at what Biden and his son did, and when you look at other people, what they've done, and I believe there was tremendous corruption with Biden, but I think there was beyond corruption, having to do with the 2016 campaign and what these lowlifes did to so many people, to hurt so many people in the Trump campaign, which was successful despite all of the fighting us. I mean, despite all of the unfairness. So we are looking at corruption. We're not looking at politics. We're looking at corruption.
What did you say to the Chinese about the Biden, sir?
I don't know. Somebody said that a long time ago. Was that in 2017? I don't know. You'd have to tell me when. All I can tell you this. When I speak to foreign leaders, I speak in an appropriate way. If you notice, they don't mention the call that I had with the president of Ukraine. They don't mention that because it was so good. The only time they mentioned it was when Adam Schiff made it up. You talk about Pinocchios, that should get 10 Pinocchios. He made up a story. It was a phony story, Adam Schiff. So they don't talk about that anymore. You know, when this came out, it was quid pro quo. Well, there was none. Also, yesterday, the ambassador, who I heard was tremendous and a tremendous person, he was 100% for what we're saying. 100%. And if you look, he also said there was no quid pro quo. That's the whole ballgame. But now the Democrats don't bring that up anymore because they lost. Look, they never thought I was going to release the phone call between the Ukrainian president and myself. When I released that call, they were jumping around like you wouldn't believe. They didn't know how to respond. And then they found out, that the call itself was so bad for them. It was a perfect call. There was nothing. We hand that call out. We've handed the call out to people and they say, wow, this is incredible. We're very proud of that call. When I speak to a foreign leader, I speak in an appropriate manner. Now, we're also doing trade deals with China, and we're doing deals with a lot of people for the country. So I'm not looking to insult people, I can tell you that. But we could probably find that out.
Would you be more willing to do a trade deal with the Chinese if they investigate Biden?
No, it has nothing to do with it. No, I want to do a trade deal with China, but only if it's good for our country. And it could happen. As you know, they're very much coming over next week, as I understand it. So I'd like to do a trade deal with China, but only if it's a great trade deal for this country. One thing has nothing to do with the other.
Do you want the House to proceed with an impeachment inquiry at this point, an official impeachment
Well, I
inquiry?
wouldn't mind because we have no rights. The way they're doing it, they've taken away our rights. So if they proceed, and, they'll just get their people, they're all in line, because even though many of them don't want to vote, they have no choice. They have to follow their leadership. And then we'll get it to the Senate, and we're going to win. The Republicans have been very unified. This is the greatest witch hunt in the history of our country. So we beat the one that started immediately. We went through 2 years of Mueller, and that came out like a 10. It came out perfect. And a few days go by, and they start this nonsense. And this is just as ridiculous. So the Democrats, unfortunately, they have the votes. They can vote very easily, even though most of them, many of them, don't believe they should do it. And I do believe that because of what they're doing with Pelosi and their real leaders, AOC +3, that's their real leaders. I really believe that they're going to pay a tremendous price at the polls. And we saw the first glimpse of it 2 weeks ago in a great state, North Carolina. We saw a great glimpse of what's going to happen. Because in North Carolina, we had 2 races. One gentleman, Dan Bishop, was down by 17 points with 3 weeks to go, and he won easily. And the other man, as you know, Greg Murphy, was up by a very little bit, and he won by a massive amount. I don't know, someplace in the 20s, 20% or something, maybe higher. So I think you got your first glimpse of what's going to happen. And the big key is that I have to campaign there. But if you look at what happened in North Carolina, 2 races, we won both of them, and we won them easily. And one was almost tied, and the other one was a big lead. And that one turned, and the tie became a landslide. Well, I don't know about Mitch. I have a lot of respect for Mitch McConnell. I know that I saw his statements, and he thinks that this is ridiculous. He thinks it's unfair. I saw his statement yesterday that he put out where he read my phone conversation, and he thought it was station, and it was. But see, the Democrats don't talk about that anymore. They try and go to other things. These people are looking for anything they can get because they know they're going to lose the election. And we're in election season now. For them to be doing this now, it's never been done.